Welcome, everyone, to the From the Shadows podcast. I'm your host, Shane Grove, and with me, as always, is the super producer.
Greetings.
I believe you do have your shirt on tonight. Yes?
Greetings, everybody. And yes, Shane.
You're not.
I got my pants on, too, if you really need to know.
Oh, we don't need to know that. We don't need to know that.
It's a family show. It's a family show.
Actually, I'm kind of disappointed that you got your pants on. I got to be honest with you. I got to be honest. So, hey, everybody, we just want to remind before we get started with the show, if you've got a story, and a good one, because every story is a good one, get a hold of us at From the Shadows Podcast on Facebook, on Instagram, FromTheShadowsPodcast.com. Go to our website. Get a hold of us. Find me on Instagram at Shane Grove Author. Find me on Facebook. Don't bother finding Jason because he's too busy. He's already told us before we started he's too busy. But yeah, get a hold of us. We've been getting lots and lots of great eyewitness reports, and we love having eyewitnesses on the show. But sometimes we have celebrities on the show and not just eyewitnesses.
Right.
And tonight, Jason, I think that's how we could label this. We have a celebrity from the other side of the world joining us. She comes to us from our good friend Brent Thomas from the Paranormal Portal. He sent me a message. He said, "Hey, have you ever had Sarah on the show?" And I'm like, "Well, no, we haven't had her on the show. We're not that high class of a show." So he goes, "Well, if you want a class to join up, you better get, I'll introduce you." And so joining us to talk about the Yowie. And for those of you who do not know what the Yowie is, you're going to find out. And I think some other paranormal stuff from the land down under, which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's Australia, is the our celebrity guest, Sarah Bignell. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome,
celebrity
Sarah.
In your presence right now.
That's right. Love that accent too.
Are you talking to me, Jason, or are you talking to Sarah?
I'm gonna let you figure it out without on your own.
and before we get started, I do want to add to everybody that's listening, no matter what you think of the interview afterwards, if you think Sarah's terrible, great, whatever, at least go check out her podcast, Yowie Central, because it has the best theme song of any pod, and that includes ours, which I happen to be a co-writer on. It still beats ours, I have to say. It's kind of a mic drop moment for Sarah right there. She's got everybody beat. So
yeah, it's the most brilliant song. It's by Carrie Grip, and it's the best Sasquatch song out there. Yeah. I couldn't find anything on Bigfoot, on Yowie, on Sasquatch, or anything else around the world. I couldn't find anything better than that song. And Carrie Grip very kindly said, I wrote to him and said, "Can I use it?" And he was, "Yeah, go for it." So I was pretty lucky, actually, that nobody had snapped it up before I got there.
I can't believe it. It made me feel like very happy. If the lyric can say "looking for someone to disembowel," and it makes you feel happy, that is the song right there.
I believe our
the blood right out of your spine.
Yeah, our loyal listening audience will go check this out. Believe me, I am sure. I should say our loyal, growing listening audience. Yes.
Well, hopefully you'll get some Australian people checking you out as well now.
I hope so. Yeah.
Start promoting you guys on my channel. So
yes, absolutely. Appreciate that. And I love the accent. They can just drop a line if they want to. That's cool. We'll get them on there just to talk. Say, hey, what's going on in your life today?
Boy, oh boy, Jason, this is going to turn into something else real quick here. Let's bring it back in.
It's a family show.
I don't have an accent. You're the ones with the accents.
That is true. It's all about perspective.
That's right.
Sarah, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do down there in Australia.
So I do two things. I do my own show called Yowie Central, it started about 2 years ago on a little local community radio station. It's all volunteer. And I had this idea of doing the show on this subject because it's just been a passion of mine for forever. And that sort of morphed into, I started uploading them online now, and I just getting a really good following online from around Australia and around the world. So it's pretty cool. I also do, I interview eyewitnesses for Australian Yowie research. Now, you might not know what a Yowie is or what Australian Yowie research is, so I'll tell you. Yowie is one of the names for Australia's version of Bigfoot. So we have them over here, just as you've got them over there. They're from the sounds of it, very, very similar descriptions, behaviours, smell. So many of the encounters that I've heard from over in the States are very, very similar to all the people that I've spoken to here in Australia. Lots of similarities. So when people report one of their sightings to Australian Yowie Research, it's the number one organisation in Australia. It was the first one that started and is the most renowned. We've compiled a database of reports and sightings going back to white European settlement in Australia, which is a couple of hundred years ago. And we also have old newspapers and old reports from those times. And we've compiled a database of over 1,000 cases of people reporting Yowies, of generally terrifying encounters with beings that are mostly, on average 7 to 9 foot tall, long, covered in hair, kind of man-like, half ape-like, often with a terrible stench, not always though, but often. Animals or beings, I started off calling them creatures, but I think I want to call them beings now, that are so fast, that can move so fast that it's mind-boggling, that can move through the forest with no sound, or that they can choose to make a sound. They seem to be able to go into stealth mode quite easily. They're often seen crossing roads, which I believe happens in the US a lot as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. It does. It seems that's one of the most frequent and the one sighting that people seem to enjoy the most is when they just see one crossing the road.
Yeah.
And they don't have to come face to face with it out in the woods or wherever. That seems to be the most popular, as far as the end result.
Well, yeah, true. Although I've spoken to 3 different women in the last few months who had terrifying encounters driving their cars at night alone, country road, no other traffic around, no street lighting or anything, and have been chased by these beings for quite some time. Now, the one woman I spoke to, you'd think you'd be safe in your car and a roadside sighting would be relatively benign, but this woman was chased by, at first she looked in the rearview mirror, in the side mirror, and thought, there's something chasing me, maybe it's a cow, but then she realised that the back was slanted, like the front legs were longer than the back legs. It seemed to be bounding after her and was paralleling her along the side of the road, and all of a sudden it stands up onto 2 legs, is still running as fast as she's going, 90 kilometres an hour, and looks in the window at her. She had a little dog in the car who was going absolutely berserk. She was terrified, and then it bounds and leaps over the car and runs off into the bush on the other side of the road. So I can only imagine how terrifying that would be.
Oh God, that would be terrifying.
That's one of the craziest. That's one of the craziest sightings I've ever heard.
I've got three that are almost identical. I mean, obviously different people, different parts of the country, but similar situation. And
I was going to ask if they were in the same part or different, but they're okay. So they're in different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of those was near Coffs Harbour at a place called Bongle in New South Wales, and the other one was a little bit further up the coast, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, but very similar situations where it's a woman on her own, a little dog in the car, and a creature that runs as fast as the car, but and looks in the window. And I can only just imagine the need for clean underwear after that would be very strong, I imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah, I will have you know you just stole my line. That's what
Sorry. Great minds think alike.
Now, okay, so I want to ask you, because this is something I've heard, like Wes and some of those guys on the really big Bigfoot shows kind of say is, so Australia, when is your first documented sightings? You said they were hundreds of years ago, right?
Yeah, so we have. I'd have to check up the exact date, but we've got we have newspaper or early newspaper versions. Australia was started becoming invaded, settled by Europeans in the late 1700s. So in those early days, there were newspapers, spreadsheets that had some local news information on them. And there's quite a lot of reports from those early days of people seeing some strange creature that was kind of like an ape, kind of like a baboon. Some of them talk about it even having a little bit of a muzzle like a baboon. So back from the late 1700s, early 1800s, we have reports of strange, hairy, wild men.
And so we have the similar stuff here in America in the 1800s. And so, of course, for those people who remember past 5 minutes ago, the world's a much different. There's zero chance that somebody in Kentucky who reports a wild man in Kentucky in the 1750s is being influenced by the Melbourne Daily News article that appeared the day before about a sighting outside of Melbourne. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So here's two really other side of the world experiencing the same thing in the same time frames, describing the same creatures. I mean, so at what point do people really start saying, maybe there's something to this? Where, I mean, so how is it looked at in Australia? Is it like is this a fantastical creature? Like, I mean, it's not quite as taboo here in the United States as it was 30, 40 years ago. Like when I was a kid growing up, people really laughed at you if you said you believed in Bigfoot. Okay. How is it received in Australia?
It's very much the same. There's still significant ridicule that people who bring up this subject to their family and friends, if they've had a terrifying encounter, or even just want to talk about the subject, there's absolute ridicule from most people. We don't have it's not as well known a subject as it is in the United States. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason why I do my show, just to demystify it, destigmatize it. Let's talk about it. There's all these people seeing very similar creatures all over the country and all over the world.
Yep.
We don't know what they are, but there are so many more people sitting on encounters and sightings that haven't told anybody. and that
For
they
fear
haven't
of
even reported to
ridicule.
us.
Yeah, I'm
Exactly.
sure. Mm-hmm.
I frequently talk to people who had a sighting 20, 30, 40 years ago. They remember it as clearly now as when it happened because it was so life-changing, but they've never told anybody. You know, it's so that's what it's like here. It's not as popular a subject yet.
So imagine the first people, that first people that went to Australia and came back and described a kangaroo, a duck-billed platypus, whatever. What else is over there that is only indigenous to Australia that would seem crazy to other parts of the world? I mean, those are a couple things that, if you went back and described them to people that, from in Africa, in Europe, in North America, they'd be like, you're nuts. That stuff doesn't exist. I've never seen that, but it's stuff that only exists there. And so why wouldn't we think that there was other things that only exist? I mean, that's the crazy thing is the Yowie sounds more similar to anything else in other parts of the world than some of the other animals that exist in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So how then? So the Aborigines, they are, that's our Native Americans here. The people that originally inhabited the lands. Do they hold Yowie in the same, I guess, awe or respect as what Native Americans seem to with Sasquatch and Bigfoot here?
Yeah, absolutely. They have stories, cultural stories, all over the country. They've got names and stories for this being. In fact, there are two. We have two different kinds here in Australia that look similar but are different entities. And there's the big fellas and the little fellas. So there's the Bigfoot equivalent here, but we've also got a small equivalent that looks similar but just anywhere between 2 and 4, 5 foot rather than the giant ones. But the Aboriginals talk about them being, and I have to be careful not to generalise as Aboriginals because they have different Aboriginal nations all over the country, and all of them have slightly different stories and different languages and different cultures. So, but in general, I've spoken to quite a few Aboriginal people from various parts of the country, and they seem to be saying that these creatures are half alive, half flesh and blood, and half something else. That they're an ancient entity that were here before human beings, before Aboriginal people were in Australia. That they've been here forever, but they very much believe in that some of it's related to an ability to shapeshift, to move between dimensions, to have special abilities like that.
And this is what the Aboriginals. This is what they believe. Okay.
Yes.
That's not because, I think Native Americans hear like a lot of their legends, that these are creatures of nature, of they're one with nature, so to speak, and they have sort of a mystical type of application to them, to where they kind of blend in. And now I don't believe say shapeshift, or because they have other entities the Native Americans do that shapeshift, the Wendigo and Skinwalker, and but it's funny how much reverence these Native people have for these creatures in whatever part of the world, and I think here, we quickly a lot of people quickly dismiss what Native Americans have to say on the subjects about nature and stuff. I mean, is it the same way over there, or do people listen?
I think it's changing now. People listen more now. Certainly when we've done a few, with Australian Yowie Research, we publish some of the interviews we do, we make them into YouTube videos and with art, CGI artwork, and when we do have an Aboriginal person telling their stories on the show, people are genuinely really, really interested in hearing more about what the Aboriginal people have to say. What we do come across, though, is a lot of Aboriginal people don't trust us whiteys with all the knowledge. Like, we're not allowed to know everything about them. Apparently, there's a lot more. There's a more like mystical side of them or magical side of them that we're not trusted to know. So, yeah, to answer your question though, yeah, that there's people are listening to them more and more now than they did in the past.
That's interesting, and I think, unless you're just so obtuse, why wouldn't you listen to the people that were here long before the rest of us were?
Yeah,
and
that's what I was just thinking. Yeah. Come on now.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of we think. Well, I'm just going to blame it. It's kids these days. They just think they know everything, But everything isn't in your cell phone, isn't in your computer. Those are just byproducts of the latest technology. The real technology is the people who lived and were one with the land and knew how nature worked, knew how the animals worked. That's real technology. I've got air quotes, but that's really knowing what's going on.
That's knowing how the world really works. Yeah, that's been passed down through generations. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, go ahead, Sarah. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and if some of that knowledge and some of that belief is that these are ancient entities and they're not human, they're partly flesh and blood and partly something else. I think we need to open our mind to those possibilities as well. How many times do you hear stories of orbs being seen in the same place as Bigfoot or UFOs?
All the time. Multiple.
All the time. It happens here all the time as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we hear that all the time, but then you have Bigfoot researchers and so-called experts that draw that line in the sand and they just say, oh, hogwash.
Yeah, they're on one side of the fence and the other half of these groups are on the other side. Yeah.
It kind of happens here too. In fact, someone commented on I've got a Facebook group for Yowie Central, and someone commented, people post things that they find interesting on there, and somebody posted something about that spiritual side, and another person said, when you post things like that, it detracts from our cause, and I felt like saying, what your cause might be to prove that Yowies are flesh and blood, but if you go into something, shutting someone else down and saying your opinion, denigrates the research that we're doing and spoils it all, then you're closing off a whole realm of possibilities of what these creatures might really be.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Yowie Central goes into paranormal things and UFOs and psychics and demons and all that sort of stuff as well. So I have an interest in that. And I don't believe closing off that whole world is a very smart research strategy.
No, it's too limiting. You have to be willing to accept other people's their what they believe in order to get the full picture of what's going on. You just have to do that. You can't just say, okay, this is flesh and blood and that's all there is to it. Well, how do you justify? And then you'll overlook facts. It's like you'll get that tunnel vision. And it's like either you're trying to prove your point or you want to really find out what's going on. You have to make up your mind.
Yeah, and I think as human beings, we've kind of closed ourselves off in general in our societies. We've closed ourselves off from a lot of things like that, and I think to our detriment.
Yes, I agree 100%.
Well, it's just how long did here in America did we spend discrediting anybody who claimed to have seen a UFO or have a alien encounter, only to a couple months ago have the government come out and say, yeah, there's something out there, but we just don't really know. And exactly. I don't think there was a whole lot of apology card. I mean, I'm a mailman. I don't think there's a whole lot of apology cards mailed out to people saying, hey, we're sorry.
No, I don't think so.
No, I didn't get one.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. So how do you just say it's black and white? Because it's really not. Because just because there may be these creatures running around that are flesh and blood alone does not mean, I mean, when you, we'll go back to the native peoples, when they are telling you there's something spiritual about these beings, then why would you argue with them and say, no, there's not. No, there's not. Then that just makes you ignorant.
Yes, and, exactly.
Not willing to, like you said, Jason, see everybody's side. And because they're not trying to prove to us one way or another. They're just saying, hey, look, this is what we know.
Yeah, these are the facts. These are
the facts as we know it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
I think if you're getting really irritated because someone else is researching in a different direction, then that's saying something about you rather than anything else. Do you know what I mean?
It is.
Someone gets really angry because someone else happens to be talking about the possibility of a spiritual side to this subject, and saying that ruins it for everybody else. It makes everybody else look at us in a bad light.
Yep.
I was like, who cares? I don't care what other people think.
Yeah, some of the researchers get so caught up in their tenets on what they believe, and they're just like you said, they're just totally closed-minded to anything that goes against their line of research. Yeah.
And you can't. There are certain. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, go ahead. I just was going to ask the next question, but go ahead.
Oh, just a final note on that. Then there are so many people who report very strange things happening, not just seeing a Yowie, but having that Yowie almost disappear in front of them, or you might be walking along at nighttime, you're 100% convinced that there's something right. You can hear it footstepping behind you, and you swing your torch around and there's nothing there. Or you're out in the bush and all of a sudden you feel paralyzed with fear. Like you've heard something, and this has happened to quite a few different people. They've heard a growl, they've realized there's something there, and then all of a sudden they can't move. Mm-hmm. It's like a spell on them or something. Some people say that might be related to infrasound. But you've got to be able to take in, all these people are reporting this sort of thing. You've got to be able to take in that information, I think.
Yeah, we've had some eyewitness accounts around here where people have said the exact same thing. They've heard these things make this here noise that it's just like resonates through them like a force, and then they feel like they're paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or people see like bushes being parted as though something's moving through the bush, but there's not. So you can see the tree moving, but you can't the bush moving, but you can't see
what's making it move.
Anything. Yeah. What's making it move?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and no offense to the people that just believe in flesh and blood, but I'd kind of like to know all this other stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. It seems a little paranormal to me, or it's something that we don't understand.
Yeah. Before I go out traipsing around the woods, I'd like to know everything that could happen.
Yeah.
You know? So Sarah, tell us. Give us a couple of your favorite Yowie stories that you have, other than this lady being chased by, the next Marvel hero. It sounds like.
I'm thinking of the Hulk doing the exact same thing.
The Hulk or Iron Man or something, or something like that.
Yep.
Like, what are some of the best stories that you've gotten from some of your guests, or stuff that maybe you haven't even got a chance to air yet?
So we've actually got one coming up. The next witness audio report that the Australian Yowie research team are working on. I did the interview with this man, Billy. He's an Aboriginal fella from up in Queensland, and I interviewed him about about 6 months ago, and he had heard lots of stories about Yowies from his father, and he's out camping near the Wappa Dam, which is country area inland from the coast in Queensland. And he's with his family. They've got a fire going. It's nighttime. They didn't have any other lights on at that stage. And he's there with himself and his brother and a family friend and his son, and he hears something crack, like a branch breaking, like something stepped on it. And then so Billy and his brother go, what's that? Billy goes to grab the torch, shines it on where they heard this noise, and there's this 8-foot massive hairy creature standing there staring at them. And he described it as though it was actually quite inquisitive. He felt like it was a young one, and it was looking in fascination at them, really, until Billy's brother started screaming and was just panic-stricken, screaming, and the expressions on this creature's face changed from curiosity to anger. And Billy said, all of a sudden, I got this feeling that if I didn't tell my brother to stop screaming, that this thing was going to crush him, walk over there and crush him. The creature's gone to hide behind a tree, squats down with its back to the tree, but was too wide to hide behind the tree, so he could see the shoulders on either side of the tree. He yells over to his brother, "Shut up, for God's sake, shut up." And he looks down at his son, and his son, who was maybe 12 years old at the time, had his mouth open, like tears pouring down out of his eyes, but not a sound, like he was so frightened. And it ends up standing up and moving away. But the idea that, like, his brother was so panic-stricken, it was absolutely terrifying. He said he described it as it looked half human, half ape, like a real mix between the two. It didn't look completely one or the other. Mm-hmm. He described it as hair covering all of the body except for the face. So it had sort of black skin and then dark brown hair covering everything else. It had a round head, not a cone-shaped head, which we do here sometimes as well. In fact, he said his father had told him the cone-shaped ones, the ones with the cone-shaped heads are the really bad ones. You've got to watch out for them.
Ooh.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because we do get
a very interesting point right there.
Yeah. Let me see. What else did he say? So that's about. So Billy grew up, because he's an Aboriginal guy, and he grew up, and his grandfather grew up out in the living out in the bush, and they were always told the children don't go out and play at night, because these creatures will get you. It's not just an old wives' tale by the sounds of it.
Well, no kidding. No. What about that story? But really, okay. So the brother starts screaming, and the creature tries to hide behind a tree with his back. Yeah. That's like a human kid, like a reaction, like, okay, if I close my eyes, they can't see me. Okay, like exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm gonna that's like a human kind of reaction. Like if I stand sideways, even though I'm 3 feet wide and suck in, they're not going to be able to see me. I'm going to be able to hide behind this tree. Yeah.
Totally.
I like to. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say it even peeked after that. It peeked out from behind the tree, which is as well. So it was such human behavior. It was fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, that absolutely is, and it probably was bigger than it was so much bigger than the tree that, you know, I'm picturing this in my head, and it's really funny.
It is.
It's really funny.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very cool.
Exactly.
And so maybe one of the other ones I've spoken about this one before, but it's one of my favourites. There's this guy. This is up in Queensland. He's going for a walk. This was only a year ago during some of the COVID lockdowns that we've had here, and he went for a walk in this park area. It's only about 17 kilometres west of Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland, major city. It's not that far out of town, but it's quite heavily wooded, and it connects to several other national parks. So it's but strange because it was so close to a city. Anyway, he's gone for a walk. He's a runner. He's an athlete. He's a scientist. Never heard of Yowies before, and decides to go off the track a little bit. He could hear some rocks clacking together up ahead, and he thought, "Oh, that's a strange sound. I might see what's making that noise." And steps off the track and decides to walk up a creek bed. Now, the creek it was middle of summer, so there wasn't a lot of water, but there was a little bit in there. But he's coming up the creek bed, and a couple of 100 metres in front of him, he spots, in fact, not even a couple of hundred, maybe 50 to 100 metres in front of him, spots a small yowie, so maybe 5 foot tall, clacking rocks and swinging its arms around like it was playing in the creek bed. There was a little bit of water in there, so it was kind of splashing around and clacking rocks. And when this creature spots the witness, it turns its head to the creek bank and it raised its eyebrows, so it looked surprised, purses its lips like it was making some kind of whistle or sound. He couldn't hear the sound, but it pursed its lips like it was doing something. And then this massive 6-7 foot tall big mama, big papa steps down as though it was sort of hiding on the bank of the creek. And when what we think is Junior calls to mum or dad, and mum or dad comes down and then bellowed at the witness. So
Gosh.
can you?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So this stomp, roar, bellow, and he spun around and ran for his life. He was so disturbed by this and so frightened, completely understandable. He couldn't tell it. He hadn't told his family. I think he might. A year later, I think he has, but he spent the first 6 months, he didn't tell his children or his wife. He had to go on anti-anxiety medication because he was so shaken. But it really, really rare to see two creatures at once, and what we suspect is a juvenile and a parent, and to see them vocalising as well. Pretty cool.
Yeah, because you're not the guy. You're not the guy that.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would. But that again is now that's typical. It's like a bear.
That's
like
what I was just thinking. That's what a bear would have did.
Yeah, it really seems like there's a lot of human characteristics and animal characteristics in these creatures, which really. I mean, that's kind of what I think is that they're.
Yeah, I don't know if you can say that's an animal characteristic. I really think that just shows that they run in families. You know what I mean? I mean, they're intelligent enough to know that, you say something could be messing with my kid. I got to get this thing away from my kid or whatever is going on. Yeah,
and that's something that an animal would do, right. But I think there's enough. It just seems like there's just just enough human in whatever these animals are that there's got to be an interesting origin story somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe that's what's so secretive is that maybe we aren't prepared to know that.
Well, I think they're beings. There's some type of a race amongst themselves that's living here and been here probably throughout history.
Yeah, I cannot argue. They have to be way more ancient than our species for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And almost so many countries have stories of these creatures.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, so you also talk some UFO stuff and some other paranormal. What are some of your other favorite subjects and why?
So I love talking about. Since I started doing the show, I've had some really interesting people reach out to me, and they've become pretty good friends as well. So I've got 2 friends who are psychic mediums and who see ghosts all the time.
Oh yeah.
So and so one of my friends sent me a message the other day saying, "Oh, I was just in the art gallery, and a ghost whispered in my ear." And I went, wow, but a really like a sound, and she couldn't quite work out whether there was a word in there, but it was such a loud whisper. It was somebody whispering, but there was no one there. She also had the other day walking around a town that has quite a lot of history that was settled a couple of 100 years ago, and all of a sudden everything went black and white, and it looked like it was a couple of 100 years ago with horses and carriages, and a man walked past her and dipped his hat at her, but with really old-fashioned clothing on, and then she snapped back into 2021. So
you know what that tells me is that she appeared to that guy in old-fashioned clothing herself.
Yes, because, so that's what I was wondering too.
Well, right? Because wouldn't the guy be like, "Whoa, what?" Like instead of just like, unless he's just a player, and he was just like, "Hey,
It's like, hey, baby.
Hey, baby.
Dig your outfit."
But dig your outfit, yeah. But isn't that amazing though? Like from doing these shows, the people that you really meet that then become friends, and some of the stuff they tell you, it just, especially the spirit stuff, is mind-boggling. Because I've seen, I've seen a couple what I would call ghosts, and so there's no question that sort of stuff, in my mind, exists. The same way that if somebody,
no doubt,
yeah, the same way that somebody sees it, and when you can talk to people who are actively out researching it and experiencing it and are credible. There's nothing, I'm sorry, there's not very many people making it rich, researching Yowie's, Bigfoot, ghosts. And stuff. I mean, the difference between people that are famous and making a lot of money and the people that just do it because they are passionate about it is very disproportionate. And so, I don't think there's reasons for a lot of these people to make up stories or embellish them. And you get to know people and you trust their character, and you have no choice but to just be, okay, that happens, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Well, you see,
I
was just say that's the reason why I'm so happy we have shows like yours and like ours, and with these forums that we have and these groups where we can, we got a platform where people can say things that are on their mind and not have to worry about being ridiculed because they've experienced something and they can't really truly articulate it because it's never happened before. And if nobody else has experienced that, you don't have anything to relate to. And that's more frustrating,
I interviewed a guy who had a Yowie sighting as a child, but we also got on to talking about other ghost spirit things that have been happening for him. And he asked me at the end of the interview if he could speak to my friend Joel, who's one of the guys I've become really friendly with and who has lots of spirit activity going on.
Mm-hmm.
And he's heard Joel on my show and asked me if he could get in touch with Joel because he was afraid that he had a negative attachment and couldn't seem to clear it. So I started a little messenger group with Joel and this guy, and Joel's so generous with his knowledge. He's spent quite a long time writing messages and communicating with this witness to help him work out how to get rid of this negative attachment that he reckons he had. So in a way, it's also really cool to be able to, if there are people who need support, to be able to go, oh, well, I know just the person who can help you with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is very cool to be able to do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So the guy who has the attachment doesn't feel so alone.
Yes.
And has support and some ideas as to how to get rid of it.
Yep.
Yeah, because who do you really turn to?
Exactly. You can't go to a psychologist or anything like that because they think you're mad.
That was the driving force of when we started our forum, was for that reason. Not just to compliment the show or to have something to do. Believe me, we got plenty to do. But I will say that it's a way where hopefully we can help people. And also, the more people that do speak out, the more maybe we'll be able to understand some of these things.
Yeah.
Keep
so
an
that's
open
why
mind.
you started your show.
That is the reason why, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, do you yourself experience any of these things, or are you kind of like just an enthusiast and you just love to, like you said, connect people and talk to people, or are you actively out trying to get an eyewitness story of your own, like for a ghost or a UFO or a Yowie?
A bit of both. So I've always been an empath and I've always felt energies, and I've always felt if there's something wrong. I've got a really strong intuition, and I can feel in buildings where there's the energy in here is sad or angry. Like I can feel that. I don't see ghosts as such, but I can feel them. I can sometimes feel them if they're around. It's hard to explain. I haven't seen a Yowie yet, but I've heard a few sounds in the bush that sort of sounded like possibly. I've once smelt that really bad stench, and felt that uneasiness that people describe. I've had that a few times. But I guess for me, what I love doing, and I guess my area of expertise is interviewing witnesses rather than field research. I don't really know enough about field researching to pretend to know what I'm doing out there at all. I do have one of those thermal cameras though, which is really fun. I've been looking at lots of rabbits and kangaroos at night.
That would be fun right there.
It is. As silly as that sounds, it is really fun. So no, I'm always open to something happening to me, but mainly just focus on interviewing people and documenting what they've experienced, what they've seen.
Hey, look, that's just as important as, going out and doing the research, because you are doing research. It's just not all the time out in the field,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because at least not every time that people go out and do research in the field are they coming back with evidence. At least when you go talk to somebody, you're coming back with something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That is very true.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I'd look at it.
Yeah,
that's very true, Shane. Very true. Can't argue.
Dean Harrison, who's the founder of Australian Yowie Research, he's had quite a few Yowie sightings, scary ones. And he's out researching with the team all the time. Now, but they're up in Queensland and I'm down in Victoria. So I'm a very long way from being able to go out on the weekends with them. But they're out there all the time. And it's hard. it's hard work. Like they do incredibly long, arduous hikes through almost impenetrable scrub. There are snakes, there are scorpions, there are leeches, there are spiders, it's full on and intense. So
I mean, aren't there butterflies in Australia that can kill you? I mean, literally. I mean,
so I'm much more of I love going camping. I love bushwalking. I've got dogs, so I go out in the bush all the time, and I love camping. But I like sitting by the fire, drinking a glass of wine, rather than tromping through the bush with leeches and ticks and snakes. And no, I'll leave that to the boys. That's not my area of expertise.
Sarah, we won't tell them, but I think that makes you the smart one.
Yes,
that's what I think. I think that makes you the smart one. So what do like how close? And then I mean, this is kind of a fanciful question, but I mean, how close do you think those guys are into really getting some evidence that's irrefutable?
It's really hard to say what's irrefutable other than shooting one and dragging it into a lab, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that is true.
And that's not what we're about at all. It's really hard to say. But, recently, a couple of months ago, they go out all the time regularly, and they often go to similar places so that if there are Yowies in that area, they get to know the boys. And they get to also know that the boys aren't there with weapons. They're not shooting. They're just camping and cooking things that smell nice and playing music. Dean's, in the last couple of months, he decided he was going to play classical music, loud. And
I'm gonna stop you right now. If Dean's out there playing music, I'm gonna put a plug in for my frequent co-writer and one of Australia's best singer-songwriters, Greta Ziller. He needs to be playing Greta's new EP, Out in the Bush. That's what he needs to be playing.
Okay.
And I suggest anybody from Australia go check out Greta because she is fantastic, and I think her music would be the one that would tame the savage beast. I got to just say it.
I will. I'll check it. I'll check her out. She is
fantastic. I mean, she's going to hate me for saying this because she's so humble. But I mean, there will be a time in the near future the whole world will know how very special she is, and she's going to blow up, and probably not return my calls then. But anyway.
And now it's on record that you said it first. Yeah, so the whole idea was to habituate the local Yowies to their presence. So when they got that footage, we've just got these brand new thermal cameras, and Buck, who was the cameraman on that night, generally the strategy is a couple of them will stay at camp, and then a couple of them will walk out, anywhere 50 to 100 metres away from camp, and sit in the dark with the thermal camera. So it's not infrared, so it's only getting heat signatures. So we think that these creatures can't see or sense the cameras like they can with infrared trail cams and things like that. So Buck was just playing around with his camera. It's the first night he'd used it, and he thought he was zooming initially, but he was actually just going through the different filters, like very different colours. You can have it grey and white. You can have it blue and red. You can have different colour effects. And basically he's captured on film what we think is two beings coming up from behind a tree, peeking out from behind that tree, standing up and leaning down to pick something up. And it was when it leaned down, and I just couldn't believe it when I saw this footage. You could see the whole shape of the head, the profile of the face, the eye ridge, the jaw, the nose, like it was, and its arms. It was clearly a bipedal creature, and it looked like there were two of them, one watching from behind, watching with their backs to each other, so watching approach from both sides. It was so exciting, like that. Even getting that footage, we don't care if it's, if it doesn't convince everybody else, but just getting that footage was mind blowing. So hopefully we get some more. They're out there all the time. So
yeah, I would be excited to see that footage. I mean, that right there, to me, that's progress.
I actually saw that before we got on the line with Sarah, and it is pretty impressive.
Nice.
I mean, it's look, if it's not an 8 foot, at least one of them's huge. I mean, the one is huge looking.
Yeah.
If it's, you tell me what it is then. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's not what it is, what else do they got running around in Australia that is that size?
It was about 9-10 foot tall.
Wow.
Yeah, unless Luke Longley was back home hanging out. Does anybody even know who Luke Longley is? Does anybody?
No, I don't.
What?
He's Luke Longley.
Luke Longley, I'm sure he's from Australia. Come on, Jason. He played with the Bulls with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, the basketball player. Yeah,
Okay, all right. Okay, that's been a while ago.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Jason, edit that part out.
No, I'm not. People are just going to know just how ignorant I am.
and how ignorant I am.
Yep.
I mean, he's probably only a national hero in Australia. I mean, come on. Anyway.
My care factor is 0.
Oh, man. I hope Luke Longley's not listening. Oh, geez.
Oh, I hope he's not.
Yeah, he might show
Luke,
up on your forum and say
Yowie?
something.
Wouldn't that be funny if he did?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, boy. Well, Sarah, I am so glad that Brent got us in touch, because I mean, it's great to hear what's going on the other side of the world, and it's basically the same stuff that's going on here.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
That adds validity to it. I mean, that just goes to show these creatures. This is not in somebody's imagination. These creatures are real. I don't even think of a creature like a dumb animal. I'm talking about they're beings. There is an intelligence factor here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think all of our listeners, they got to go check out your podcast, Yowie Central. I mean, if they've listened to you for the last hour and not had a great time, then I don't know what to tell them. I can't.
They're losers.
Well, I'm going to check it out.
I can't.
Since you leave me in the dark before each show about our guest, I'm going to have to do my research afterwards. See, now I'm not going to be able to ask her any questions if I have. I'll have to try to contact
you haven't prepared? Oh, my God.
He doesn't. No, he doesn't prepare me. He wants to hear my unfiltered reaction to everything. So that leaves me at a deficit sometimes.
Oh, I think you're getting your fair share. Trust me.
I know. I don't want to make you seem to be that much of a bad guy.
Well, Sarah,
and they definitely. Sorry, just before you, you can check out Yowie Central, but please check out Australian Yowie Research's YouTube channel as well, because that's where we publish all the witness interviews on Australian Yowie Research YouTube. But we've also got a website that's got listings by state, an alphabetical order of all the 1,000+ reports that we've got in our database. So if they're interested in the Yowie,
yes,
check Australian Yowie Research out too.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think I just Googled Dean Harrison's group. I think that was what I just and that brought up the thermal camera footage that you were just describing. So I mean, it was very easy for me to find, and I'm sure that's on that YouTube channel too, probably, right? Or not?
Yeah. It's on the YouTube channel. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
And we just put out a new witness interview last week from the Banarkan State Forest. And so that one's a brand new one that's out, an interview that I did about 6 months ago, but we've finally put it into video form. So, yeah, there's heaps of stuff on there if you want to check out the Yowies in Australia.
Sweet. And then your podcast, people can find that on Apple, Spotify, Podbean, everywhere that you can find podcasts, right?
Yep, pretty much. Yep.
Good.
And I've got a Facebook group if anyone wants to join. And I post links there. I'm working on a website and more content and video content and all that sort of stuff, but it hasn't happened yet because it just hasn't. I'm working towards it.
Mm-hmm. Well, just stay on it and make sure it happens. That's great.
Yeah, I will.
Yes.
So if they want to find me, it's Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, blah, blah. Yep.
Good.
Yep. All right. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for getting up so early. And
Let me tell you, it was early for me.
and spending some time with us. I greatly appreciate it. I know Jason
Yeah,
does.
we really appreciate it. Yes, it's been a pleasure.
I hope everybody
Absolutely.
goes and checks out your podcast and gives you some support and some love. And if nothing else, is do it for the song, because the song is fantastic.
That's right. The song is awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both. I'm so glad Brent suggested us talking together, because that was fantastic.
Yes.
I
It's
got to
been
thank
great.
you
We
for
must
that.
do it again.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Your turn to come on my show next.
Yep.
All right.
We'll
I
do
like
that.
it.
All right.
Yep.
Like we said, if you want to sync your show, we'll be.
Hey, we'll even bring the
We'll be the
barrister
anchors.
with us too, who is our
Oh,
other
gosh.
protege.
Oh gosh, she doesn't. Let's just say the judge. We'll bring the judge with us. That'll be a whole. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Well, if we can keep him in check, that's. The...
No, he's great. He would love it. He would love it.
Yes, he would love. All right. Well, hey Sarah, thank you so much, and you have a great day over there in Australia, and I'll be looking forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yes.
Yeah, right
Yep.
back at you.
All right. Thank you. You take care.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.